Wilkinson here. Today my guest is Michael Christl. Who are you anyway? First of all, tell everybody hi.
Hi.
Be courteous.
Oh, of course. If you give me some space, I'll do just that, Wilkinson.
All right. Well, then now tell them who you are.
Michael Christl. I am a native Nevadan. Was born and raised in a little town by Lake Tahoe, Gardnerville, if you know it. Have lived in 3 of the 4 time zones. I drove here from Iowa, sold everything that I essentially owned in 2021 and started out on my own kind of journey on August 1st of 2022. And I am in California or the LA area specifically to work on a nonprofit healing center whose mutual friend of you and I, Wilkinson, Lorendi Roos, is the one who referred me to you and the reason why I'm sitting here doing this podcast with you today.
So what was it like growing up in Iowa?
I grew up in Nevada.
Oh, you did that?
Yep. So
wait, you were born in Iowa, though?
Nope. So I was born and raised in Nevada. So I'm a native Nevadan, but I did live cumulatively for 15 years in Iowa. So
I missed that loop. Okay.
That's okay.
All
so
right.
The first stint, it's because you got those headphones on. The first stint in Iowa was for 8 years, from 98 to 2006. And then I moved to Manhattan. So New York City in 2006. And then I moved back full-time to Iowa in 2015.
And how old were you when you left Nevada?
18. It was for college. I went to school in Rhode Island at Johnson & Wales University in Providence and selected that school out of the 2 options really that I ultimately had on the table to choose from. One was USC in Southern California, and one was Johnson & Wales in Providence, Rhode Island. And I went and toured both campuses thanks to my mom and dad. And USC was just not a real fit for me. I wasn't Ken and I didn't like Barbie. And I got the feeling that you were evaluated by everything that you showed up with and not who you inherently were. And I didn't want that. I have always been someone who stood for honesty and transparency, probably more than anything else. And the truth, which I feel and wholeheartedly believe will always set you free, has always been something that has been a large part of my life. I've always stood up for the underdog. I've always been the one to say things no one else wanted to say, but that needed to be said. It's a position of it's a blessing and a curse to be in that position, and yet someone has to do it. So in any case, I went back to Rhode Island, and the emphasis there was just to have fun and to just be and to connect with one of everybody. It was the first time in my life where I was surrounded by an entire suite of diversity. Growing up in Northern Nevada, it was guns, horses, and football. I liked guns and I liked horses. I played 3 other sports, so I didn't do football. Track, soccer, and ski team were my 3. And I remember when the first Black family moved to town and really felt myself gravitate towards anything and anyone that was different, and not knowing maybe what the reason was for that attraction until later in life. It would turn out to be that it was because I was different and I was naturally drawn to anything else that was as well. I just didn't know why at the time.
How are you different?
Well, at 23, well, yeah, a number of characteristics made me different for sure. My classmates, unfortunately, in middle school, identified it long before I did or was willing to admit it, but I was the token gay kid. It started in 7th grade when I transitioned to an actual middle school. Elementary school for me included 6th grade. I went to a year-round school for that specific 6th grade. So K through 5 was at one school, 6th grade was at a second school, and then 7th and 8th were at a third school. And it was hard. It was rough because I didn't know what that was and I didn't know what that meant. And it wasn't anything that I felt or embodied. Like I liked any number of girls that were in my class.
As best buddies.
No, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, no, at that particular time, I really liked them. I wanted to get to know women. Yeah,
right,
I wanted to date them and that sort of thing. It would turn out that not until the age of 23 would I actually kind of come to terms with the difference.
Did you know that you like guys too, though?
It's funny because, and maybe you can relate to this because of your past, when you don't really have any frame of reference or role model or perspective, there's no association. So you hear these terms, but there is no meaning to them other than that they're wrong. And it's the last thing that you want to be. Once I actually came out to myself and discovered at the age of 23 that the girl I moved to Iowa for, who I was on a path to marry and had names picked out for our kids, it was no longer something that I could deny. But then I started to remember with each passing year, it really was 4 years. So from the age of 23 to 27, I came out to myself because I had to figure out who I was from who I thought I was and who I knew. And here's this new person looking back at me in the mirror. And I'm like, who is this? So it was during those 4 years that a lot of childhood memories that had no meaning before now had a ton of meaning.
Kind of an aha moment.
Yes.
I get it.
And with each passing year and the more time I spent on recollecting how things unfolded, how I was feeling, circumstances, people, dreams, memories, all those types of things, I really did have a lot of early childhood memories that were gay in nature. I just didn't know what that was.
So from 23 to 27, did you have a boyfriend or no?
I did. Yeah. I had my first boyfriend. I guess I was probably 24. And the days in which we would meet in person, which I really miss because there's
no online, huh?
No, absolutely none. This was in 1999. And so looking across the dance floor and, seeing this person across the way that made me stop dancing was like, whoa, who is that? I have got to go meet them. And so I did. And we were together for 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Huh?
4.5 years. Yeah.
Was he at the same college you were at?
No, because I went to school in Providence, Rhode Island. So my girlfriend, who I met in college, we were both attending the same school. She was from a small town outside, well, not necessarily a small town, but a suburb of Illinois, of Chicago.
Okay.
And so she transferred after her sophomore year from Rhode Island to Des Moines. And the question was, hey, babe, you want to move to Iowa? And I said, sure, where's that? I had no idea. And so I pulled the Rand McNally Atlas out of the back seat of her car and looked at the population of Providence, Rhode Island and the population of Des Moines, Iowa, and Des Moines, Iowa had more people. And so I thought to myself, oh, all right, well, I know how much is going on in Providence with all or this many people. Surely there must be more going on in Des Moines, Iowa.
What were you looking for?
I was thinking just culture and activities. And
were you done with school at that point?
I actually had contracted mono from my girlfriend. At the beginning of my sophomore year, I was a year ahead of her. And I was misdiagnosed by the university quack doctor and was sent home or back to my dorm room with a bag full of drugs for about 3 months. And the viral load became so high that I don't even know how I made my flight from Rhode Island to Nevada for the holidays, for Christmas, that when I got to the airport, I couldn't even carry my bag. And I told my parents I just needed to go to the car and lay down, which is totally not me.
Right.
I was like, I have to go to the car and lay down. If you could get my bags, that would be great. And so I ended up in the hospital that next day and ended up seeing one of the top Epstein-Barr specialists who just happened to reside at Lake Tahoe because that part of the country commands a lot of really great people in their field simply because of the beauty and the nature and the environment. So I saw him and he essentially told my parents, all I can do is give him an antiviral and it's between him and his body as to whether or not he lives. Because at this point, there's nothing more I can do. The antiviral will stop the replication of the viral load he has, but if he lives or dies, time will tell.
Did somebody smack the doctor at the college?
No. And it's one of those things where, hindsight, I should have followed up and had some accountability, lodged against him or whatever, because that's not right.
Right.
And it severely impacted my immune system.
Plus you could have died.
I could have died.
Right.
Yeah. And it has really been something that has challenged my body and my overall health and well-being from that point forward.
All right. So I'm totally confused now. So you were in Rhode Island with a girl.
I was.
She went back to Chicago.
She transferred to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and asked me if I wanted to go with her.
But she was from there. Okay.
She
went
from
from Rhode Island to Iowa.
Des Moines, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And then where was the guy at the dance? That's where I'm confused.
In Des Moines. Yeah. So it was interesting because not ever having I never knew about Iowa. I never knew anything about it. And I just moved, or was willing to move to Des Moines because I loved it.
It's on my bucket list.
And it should be.
Not.
Yeah, it is probably the most spectacular state capitol building in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, it's stunning. And there's marble actually from each of the 50 states inside it. And the library, I'm getting a little off track, but the library, like Beauty and the Beast, how they have this fantastical library that's in the,
right,
Beast's mansion. It's like that. It's very total storybook. It's super cool. Anyways, and it's up on a hill, and the location and overlooks all of downtown Des Moines and the rivers, and it's beautiful. There's a lot more to the Midwest than people give it credit for.
Right.
And, back east, when I lived in New York for 9 years, I had to put a number of people in their place because I'd already lived in Iowa for 8 years. And although I didn't like it and was not on board with Iowa for the first 3 that I lived there, I really didn't like it. The joke back east was always the Midwest, something to fly over.
Right.
And it's like, well, you just keep thinking that.
Right.
Because if your ego wants to tell you that story because of something that you are not familiar with, that just shows who you are.
Right.
So, okay.
Okay, now back to the dance.
Yeah.
Did you go to the dance with a girl?
No. So in Des Moines, and the reason why I was meant to move there is because it was very small. Everybody knew everybody, especially in 1998, because there was one nightclub. And although it was a gay nightclub, or because it was owned and frequented by gays, it was where everybody went because there wasn't any other option. Okay. So it was a really great mix of everyone, old, young, straight, gay, visitors, locals, everybody was there. And between the Blazing Saddle, which is essentially Des Moines Stonewall, the equivalent of Des Moines Stonewall in New York, between the Saddle and the Garden, it's where everybody hung out. And I mean everybody. So my girlfriend and I would go to the Garden nightclub all the time with any number of people. We loved to dance and, go out and socialize and all that type of stuff. She was Leo. So Leo and Virgo together can be a very entertaining couple.
So you've been staying here a couple days, and I'm a Leo. That explains everything. There you go.
Yeah, she was August 1st.
Okay, I'm the 18th. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So it changed when I realized that when I looked at men or when I saw men, it wasn't just in an admiration or like, I want to say idolatry, but in an idolizing type way where I historically had looked at them and be like, oh, I wish I had those arms. I wish I had those calves. Wish I had that. I wish I had those pecs. Then it turned into, I want to touch those same body parts. and then that's where there's a line that you want to cross. And that is part of what makes it different. And it was undeniable. I thought, I don't know what this is. I have no idea what this is. But I think subconsciously, and of course, all of that baggage from middle school and from high school as the token gay kid who maybe put some weight to the things that other people had seen in me. And then now me recognizing maybe more about that in myself, I needed to test those waters. Because, so I try not to get ahead of myself. So I needed to go to those same places that I had gone to with my girlfriend, but alone.
Had you split up with her at that point?
No, because I needed to test. So I remember very well going to the Garden for the first time without her to see if it felt the same. I go to the bar, I order a drink. I get the drink, I pick it up. I am sloshing the drink over the edge of the glass everywhere. Like my hand is shaking so uncontrollably. I'm looking at it in disbelief because and my hand and my arm is all wet.
Like so whose arm is that?
So it's both a visual and a visceral disbelief. And I'm like, what the holy hell is going on? And I am like, oh my God, Michael, get a grip. Like you've got to get a hold of yourself. I set the glass on the bar with my other hand on my wrist, and I take my hand off the glass and I just hold my hand up, and I remember how much it was still shaking.
Right.
And I thought, this is so fantastically odd. I have been here so many times before, and never have I ever felt this way. And so it was just another kind of confirmation to me, there's something to this, and I need to see what this is about. After going, I think probably twice as a fly on the wall, meaning I basically didn't talk to anybody. I just had my cocktail and I stood and I kind of observed and just maybe wanted to kind of ease into a world that I knew nothing about to see if, I don't know, I felt more in line with that. It was kind of a weird, like I said, testing of the waters. It was just a really, really weird experience, which is part of why it's so poignant in my memory and always will be.
Now, do you realize that the fact that you were having a cocktail and not a beer is another check mark in the gay column?
No, I mean, that's the interesting thing is that I think we like to give ourselves or others a set of criteria that maybe help categorize you as to who you are or where you fit in and that sort of thing. Like we're really great as a civilization of like labeling and categorizing. And you're talking to a Virgo, so nobody loves labeling and categorizing more than me.
Right.
And so, no, I just happen to like cocktails. I mean, it started out as Midori Sours when I was 16, 17, and, you know, was able to sneak a drink in here or there. If you dressed up and you acted mature, you could get into clubs in Rhode Island. And so it was really fun for my girlfriend and I, who were nowhere, you know, a couple of years shy of 21. And yet we could still go and have a fun night out and keep it classy, not trashy, because that's where we were as that's the style that we like.
Okay, you haven't convinced me, but that's fine. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Because I've never, since I started my gay career, I've never seen so many cocktails. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I don't drink them, but everyone has cocktails.
I mean, depends on the crowd.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, maybe the circles you found yourself in have been skewed one way or another, but I just think of like beer bingo at the Saddle at like, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 nights a week that they would have it, and there'd be long necks flying off the bar. So maybe it's more regional.
Yeah.
Maybe the coasts are more cocktail oriented, and that is something I could agree with, actually.
Okay.
Whereas maybe the Midwest and the West might be more beer centric.
But in the middle of the Midwest, you were drinking cocktails.
Yeah, having recently moved from Rhode Island. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So second time at the bar is
Yeah. So
I'm getting excited here.
I went by myself. I went by myself probably twice, and then struck up a conversation with Josh. And
is Josh the guy you saw across the room?
No, he's not.
Okay.
And Josh was with his best friend, who were both attending Iowa State University, as I would later find out through conversation, and really thought his best friend was a hot tamale. He was on the Iowa State University football team and was just this big, round, super pasty white with red hair and freckles. Dude, linebacker, I don't know, tight end, linebacker, just something big and round. And completely opposite from, me, which is kind of, I feel like, who I've ultimately gravitated towards is I've never wanted to date my twin. That would just be too much. Oh my gosh. And also something that, either balances me or compliments me. I'm interested in someone who I can learn something from. And if I can't, and I'm always running the show, it's probably not gonna be for the long haul. So sorry.
So Josh and his buddy.
Yeah, so Josh and his buddy. So we got to talking and then saw him the next weekend. And I remember it was like, I want to say maybe it was around the holidays. He was staying with his parents who lived in West Des Moines at the time. Actually, probably Urbandale, doesn't matter.
Now this is the ginger we're talking about, right?
So Josh's parents lived in Urbandale.
Okay, so is Josh staying with his parents?
Yeah.
So I thought it was the other guy. Okay.
No, so it was around holiday time, and he and Dale, Josh decided, so this was the fun part, and maybe it's the same way in other parts of the country. I just didn't know about it because this was really these were my 20s. So it was all about the after party. So the after party was a thing to be invited to. And after the club was done, everybody would hang outside the front doors. And sometimes the bartenders would have after parties. Sometimes, one of the guests would have after parties. But to be invited to one was like, I'm on the list. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I've arrived. People know who I am. So Josh decides to have an after party at his house because his parents are out of town.
Oh, great.
And he invites me, and I was like, okay. And so here I am asking all the questions because I'm like, unknown territory again. I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm going to my first house party after the club. How many people are going to be there? What's going on? Who's going to be there? You know, all the details. I want to know all the things. So I go, and
Do I bring an overnight bag?
I wasn't even thinking about that part, but I
Okay,
was like,
all
oh
right.
my gosh, what's about to unfold for me? Like going into a cave and you're not sure exactly what you're going to find, right?
Right.
So I get out there, and
Well, hopefully it'll be a bear because you like the big guys.
well, yeah, I don't know. Everything I'm not. So I'm definitely
Right.
not. I'm definitely not big. So we get out there, and for whatever reason, we all wind up in his parents' bedroom, which was, granted, master bedroom, so the biggest. There's plenty of space to hang out, I guess.
How many people are we talking?
I would say probably 10. Yeah, I'd say maybe 10.
These are all guys?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
There were no, I was just trying to think. I'm like, oh my, as I visually look around the room. Yeah. No, all men. So we're sitting there, and we've all, gotten fairly cocktailed. And of course I've held back a little bit because I'm like, I got to be aware, of what's
Right.
going on around me. Like, I don't know much about any of these people, safety first. So I'm sitting on the bed, and I remember Josh coming over. He's like, so how's it going? And I said, oh, good. And he goes, you having a good time? I said, yeah. And he goes, hey, Dale's down in the kitchen making a pizza. And I said, oh, that's great, because I'm hungry. And he goes, why don't you go down and help him? I was like, oh, what? Big boy doesn't know how to cook a pizza? And he goes, why don't you just go downstairs and help him make the pizza? And I said, why? I don't need to help him make the pizza. And he grabs me and he goes, because he likes you. And I said,
Oh,
what? Like, just stunned. And I was like, he does? Yes. So go help him with the pizza. And I said, oh, okay. And I'm just sitting on the bed, on the side of Josh's parents' bed. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? This is going to be so weird. So I go downstairs, and I'm like, thinking, what am I going to do? And I get down there, and he's like trying to figure out the knobs on the oven, because of course he's cocktailed for sure. And I was like, hey, and he's like, oh, hey, what's going on? Well, Josh said you're making a pizza down here. You need a hand? Oh, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out like how to turn the oven on. And I'm like, okay, out of my way. Wilkinson's laughing because he can relate. Out of my way. And I literally flipped some switches and put some dials on and popped the pizza in the oven. And I was like, there. All right, we're good. He's like, oh, cool, man. I was like, set the timer. So we set the timer. Standing across this island from each other, this kitchen island, he goes, so, what's going on? I said, oh, not too much, but why don't you tell me about you? Like, what's going on? Like, you and Josh have known each other for a while. Yeah, we're roommates, Iowa State, blah, blah. And, that's when I found out about some other stuff. So I said, so what's your situation? Like, why are you gay? Like, what's going on? He goes, well, no, so I've got a girlfriend, and we're supposed to be married, and we're serious, but I'm just not so sure about stuff. And so he goes into more detail than that, of course, but that's the gist of everything that he is doing or where he's at in his life at that point in time.
right.
And at the end of his explanation, he goes, so how about you? And I just looked at him and I was like, pretty much the same exact thing. Like, we were both at the very exact same point in our lives.
Yeah.
And the buzzer went off of the pizza. And I was like, oh, thank God, saved by the buzzer, right? And so I was like, oh, great, pizza's done. And he goes, oh, great. So I get it out, and I cut it because I was like, this dude should not have any sort of sharp object in his hand right now. He couldn't even operate the oven. I cut the pizza and be like, all right, here, why don't you take this up? And he's like, yeah, sounds good. Oh, can you do me a favor and turn around and grab the light? And so I was like, oh, sure. So I turn around, flip the light switch, turn back around, and he grabs me and he kisses me. And I was just like, it was the first time I ever felt a man's scruff on my face. And I just froze and was totally electrified for all the right reasons, but all the scariest ones too. And just remember, like, kissing him, and the kiss was over, and I was like, okay, well, we probably better get upstairs then. Let's go. Let's get back to the party, because I don't know what this is, and I don't I have to process this, like that was a lot for me. So as the night progresses, which is not too much longer after, pizza, because the club closed at 2. So this is probably like 4 o'clock in the morning at this point.
Wow.
Josh is like, all right, well, time to go to bed. So, hey, you guys can stay in my parents' room. I'm going to go down to my room. You two come with me. Dale, Michael, why don't you take or we're going to stay down in the guest room. Dale, Michael, you take my room, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? I definitely should stay because I've had too much to drink. I want to stay because I get to spend more time with Dale, who just kissed me downstairs because apparently he likes me, which I had no idea, but I'm super excited about because I secretly liked him too. And so, okay, but what do I do? Like, how does this work? So we get in there. It's a water bed. Oh my gosh. In the middle of winter, in the middle of an Iowa winter, we have to sleep on this water bed.
Well, it's heated, right?
You would think, Wilkinson.
It wasn't?
No. So anyways, Dale's doing his thing, and I think in his mind, the music that was playing was, let's make love tonight. Like whatever romantic ballad was in his drunken head. So he starts taking his clothes off, and he's, trying to help me with mine or whatever. And he starts kissing me and blah, blah. And I was like, I push him away. And I was like, Dale, buddy, like, you're just too drunk. Like, let's go to sleep. Let's go to sleep. And he's like, huh? Oh, okay. He just crashes like on the waterbed. And I was like, oh, all right, well, that was easy. So I'm literally curled up next to him for heat purposes, literally, because the waterbed was so freaking cold. And I can't sleep because I'm reliving everything that has transpired that night.
Right.
And all the years of like, oh my gosh, and what does this mean? And what is that? And my girlfriend is at our apartment during this particular
You're living with your girlfriend?
evening. Yes. We moved to Iowa together.
Oh, so
we picked out
she
an
knew
apartment
you were going to
together.
the bar by yourself, or how'd that work out?
She knew I was going out by myself, but I did not disclose any particular agenda because there wasn't one.
But she did expect you to come back
She did expect me to come back that night. And so I was like, oh my God, she's probably going to send the cops out, like looking for me, literally. And rightly so. Like I would have done the same thing, with her. Again, this is 1990, probably the very beginning of 99, meaning like January, probably like between Christmas and New Year's, I would say. So Christmas break.
Did you even have a cell phone?
Well, so I'm thinking to myself, I did have a cell phone. I do remember having a cell phone, but I don't know I'm not sure if text messaging was like a thing yet or not, or if it was, maybe I wasn't paying for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I don't even know if text messaging was a thing. So I didn't call or respond because already when all of this is transpiring, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
So it's already 4.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, we're just going to let it go. So anyways, I'm wide awake the whole night. I don't sleep at all because I can't. So I get up, once the sun's up, I'm up. And I just remember going downstairs and Josh is sitting at the head of the dining room table in his underwear with his head in his hands because he's got a hangover. And I was like, hey, now realize I've known Josh for a period of like literally 3 whole nights over the course of 3 weeks.
Right.
Or a month,
Right.
And he goes, hey, how's it going? I said, oh, good, man. So yeah, I guess I probably should get going, but thanks for inviting me. He goes, so how'd things go with Dale? And I said, oh, he was way too drunk, like to do anything, but so it goes. Hopefully we'll get to know each other better in normal circumstances. So I said, thanks so much. I got to get back. I got to get home. So I go back upstairs and Dale's awake. And I was like, hey, how's it going? Just, I'm going to head out. And he's like, all right, well, let me get your number. I said, okay, cool. So I'm thinking to myself, this is really cool, right? This is like when everything changes.
Right.
And so, at least in my head, like the vision I have is like, oh my gosh, now Dale and I are going to find out more about each other and blah, blah, blah. So he takes my number, he's got it. And I get out to the car. And I remember being just about to get on the highway to go back to my girlfriend and I's apartment. And the Cranberries song comes on, and that the entire message of that song is that basically like this is a turning point. It's a turning point in your life and things are not really ever going to be the same. So I get back to our apartment, and of course Tara has been up all night as well because
Where are you?
She is, worried and concerned. And I have to sit her down to literally say, this is what happened. And I have too much love for you and too much love for myself to continue down this path and turn to you 20 years after we've had kids and accumulate assets and wealth and everything else or whatever we have, to turn to you 20 years from now and then say, I probably should have tested this out, but I think I might be gay.
Right.
And it was, of course, heart-wrenching and breaking, because here I am realizing I am not who I thought I was. So I'm experiencing an identity crisis.
Right.
She's losing the man she thought she was going to marry. I'm losing the woman I thought I was going to marry, and my dreams of being a father and having kids and living out that entire vision, a similar vision to the one that I was raised in. And it was just a lot. And I, unfortunately, at 23, did not really have the maturity and wisdom to behave in any other way other than to do what I had always done, which is to withdraw, to go into my cave, to figure things out with all the labeling and categorizing that a Virgo's so good at, and that had gotten me to that point in my life, and had to really kind of do a hard cut with her to be able to focus on myself and this new turn or shift in event in life for me. And that was really hard for her, because here she had spent 2 years and 4 months with somebody that she really, really loved, and vice versa. And that meant I needed to move out. And so I ended up searching around and finding a little sweat box that was what would have been considered the Des Moines ghetto at the time, because it was what I could afford. And during that time there was just a lot of hurt and pain towards for her in particular. And years later, I would recognize that before I moved to New York in 2006, felt like I needed to reach out to her and apologize for the retrospective realization of what I had done. And found an email for her and sent her an email. I said, hey, I literally just want to let you know, absolutely loved you and adored you, and just wanted to apologize and say I'm sorry for being such a dick. I didn't know better. And I just want to let you know how much I really cared for you, and how much I do still care for you and want the best for you, which is why, again, I had to do what I had to do. The hard things that I've had to say and do in my life for the good of everyone, because it was what was best. Was it what I wanted to do? Did I want to put myself through that pain or agony, or the other person or the other parties involved? No. Is it what was needed at the time? Yes.
Did she respond?
She did. And it was really nice. It just provided, I think, some really great closure for both of us. I had found out that her grandparents, who she was super close to, and they were wonderful people, and really accepted me during that time. Her father was a little bit of a difficult pill, sort of to be expected, father-daughter, very protective, very controlling. But her grandparents were very, very sweet and open, hearted and very kind, and found out that they had since passed, or at least one of them had, and I felt so bad about that because I knew how close she was to them. But also that she'd gotten married and I think maybe had some kids. And so it was really great to see that the life that she really wanted and deserved was afforded to her.
Right.
And I just am so thankful, again, that honesty and transparency is something that has always guided me in my life. And part of the reason, any number of wonderful reasons why I do feel like the truth, sets you free.
Very good.
Yeah. So
Except I'm still in the dark as to the guy at the dance. We took a different road, which is fine.
Yeah.
I always go with the flow, but I want to wrap up and come back to that. What happened to that? What happened?
So it was after I had not been with Tara for, I would say, probably a good, maybe like 9 months.
Okay. Well, and another thing, did you ever see Josh again, or Josh's friend again, Dale?
Oh, yes. Okay, so this was the crazy part. I was so excited that he had taken my number and showed an interest in me. And I go to the club like the next weekend, it was the next weekend, because I thought, well, if I haven't heard from him by then, we'll run into each other.
Right.
Because that's what you did back then. And I get there, and at some point in the night, I see him making out with this other guy in the corner. And in typical 20-something-year-old Michael fashion, I walk right up to the two of them.
No way.
As they're kissing. And I was like, oh, hey, Dale. How's it going? I never heard from you after you took my number last weekend. And then he looks at me like, holy crap, this guy actually called me out on my, shit. Yeah. And then I look at the other guy and I was like, just so you know, this guy maybe doesn't necessarily do what he says he's going to do, or something to that effect. I can't remember what it was. And I turned around and walked off. And the interesting thing, and here I thought I was like so right, like kind of very self-righteous and like, oh my gosh, you did a bad thing and blah, blah, blah.
You jumped into the drama queen thing like really fast.
I just confronted the wrongdoing. So I felt head on, just like I've always done. And it turns out the two of them ended up getting married.
Really?
And they are still married to this day. So another lesson in perspective, and that, your reality is not someone else's. And that lack of following up with me actually led to him finding the person that he wanted to spend that much time with, which is great. And now looking at photos of the two of them, which I've seen a couple since, I'm 46. So been, 23 years.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be with them.
You wouldn't?
No.
So you dodged a bullet.
So it's interesting. It's that the path that was meant for both of us, both in the case of my girlfriend and I, in the case of my first boyfriend who I saw from across the dance floor, after the thing with Dale didn't work out, was all meant to work out the way that it did.
Right.
And at the time, you don't realize that because you haven't walked enough miles to understand the relevance of that or the significance of that. But that's kind of where I'm at today. The work that I've been doing since last year has allowed me to see that there are no mistakes.
Okay. Now go back to the dance floor.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well,
I'm not letting you go without
that. Yeah.
You're not leaving loose ends up there.
Dancing for me was, music has always been a huge influence for me in my life. It really dictates my moods for sure. If I want to calm down or relax, if I want to be excited, if I want to feel sad, if I want to music just has this energetic impact on me like no other. So being on a dance floor for me, I was gifted with a wonderful sense of rhythm, and it just permeates every cell of my being. When I hear a beat or when I hear sound, it just is like electrifying. So I was always the last one off the dance floor. I was the sweatiest one out the doors of that club every single time I was there. I wasn't there to do the traditional mix and mingle. I was there with my friends to have a good time. And it was really about just dancing and exploring, the movement and the sound and all that type of stuff. It was really, really cool. And I never thought that what was such a large part of my life would become such a small part of my life, or even non-existent at this point. And I do miss being on a dance floor for sure. But this one particular night, I remember just being out there, and it was kind of a multi-leveled place.
Right.
Which was kind of cool. And the bar in the main, area, dance floor area, the dance floor was sunken, but they had this raised level up here, and then these steps that would go down on either side. So it's kind of like a sunken dance floor with a raised stage area, and then sometimes they do shows and stuff like that. But the raised area and the staircases going down to the dance floor were at the same level as the bar. And so I just remember conversation or coming up from the dance floor or going down to the dance floor, whatever else, and I look over and I just see this tall, dark-haired guy who just like, and it wasn't, yes, he was attractive for sure, but for me, there's always been an energetic chemistry that is undeniable with someone that I'm meant to be with. And I know that I don't know exactly what the time frame of us being together is, but the energetic chemistry between us is palpable. So I look over, I see him, his head turns, his eyes meet mine, and I was like, I do not know who that is, but I have got to find out. And just like, again, as I'd said before, typical 20-something-year-old Michael tradition, I walk right up to him and say, hi, how's it going? I'm Michael. What are you drinking? Or can I get you a drink? Or whatever I said. It went from there. And it was wonderful. It was really, wonderful guy, wonderful relationship, and taught me a lot about what it's like to be with a guy, because I'd never done that before. So it was a lot. That was a lot to process in and of itself. I mean, I remember the first time I was like with him, I was like, holy crap, what did I just do? It was still like, every additional layer of exploration was like learning how to walk again. It was and to do that as an adult, right? Because as a child, you don't remember that process. It's just something that happens that others guide you along to help you do. And in this particular situation, the exploration is you're kind of on your own, and you're like, oh, wow, what does all this mean? And yeah, you can listen to what other people say or see what otder people do or whatever, but it's just a different thing, especially as an adult. One, for sure, I wouldn't trade for the world.
And you were with them how long?
4.5 years.
Yeah. You keep in touch with them today?
I do. Yeah, I just saw him in Arizona.
Cool.
Yeah, he lives in North Phoenix and is living his best life. And I ended that relationship, and I remember saying to him exactly this: you will do and are capable of so much more without me. And although he maybe had another heartbreaker that was because of me.
Right.
And even then I spoke with him about it in 2016, actually. I finally asked him, from what would have been probably 2004, asked him in 2016, do you regret, me having said what I said and breaking up with you? And he's like, oh gosh, Michael, no, because I've gone on to do now what it was that I was meant to do. And I said, it's just so great to have that confirmation.
Right.
That a really difficult and tough decision that you made at the time, but that I felt with every fiber of my being, again, had to be said and done. But hearing it from the other person's perspective inside, that it did turn out for their very best, I'm like, it just completes that circle.
Cool. Well, we're going to wrap up here, but before I do that, I always ask my guest, have you learned something you could pass on to my listeners? What's a couple life lessons you learned?
Yeah, I've learned a lot in this last year for sure. And the reason why I've learned a lot is because I've kind of turned inward. It's the one thing that most people, I would say, do not take the time to do. And it probably is because they don't know how to do it. I didn't either. And through our mutual friend, Lorendi, and through the Pathways of Light coursework that I'm working my way through, which is a subset of A Course in Miracles, there are some greater themes and approaches to life that I had never heard of before. And some concepts that if I had known at an earlier age, it probably would have made my life and the lives of those around me maybe easier, and not that we don't need to go through the struggle and difficulty of some of life to be able to be here and have the conversation that I'm having with you today. It's all for a purpose and for a reason. But to know that everything that you're presented in life is either a blessing or a lesson or both really takes the sting out of a lot of life's adversity. But I think two themes in addition to that would be perspective and awareness. Awareness gives you perspective for sure. And that perspective allows you to embody the fact that your wholeness is your salvation. And the more at ease, content, and comfortable you are with who you are, where you're at, that everyone is who they are and where they're at, it just allows you to move through this particular time and space with a little more levity. And that in and of itself, for someone who operated in a very label categorized way his whole life, has been extremely liberating and freeing for me. And so I hope that if any of your listeners were to do one thing, it would be to turn inward, to do some reflective work. Maybe that's something to do in a spiritual sense that allows you to get in touch with your higher self, with your authentic self, with your soul, and really practice how to hear what your higher self truly wants for you.
Right.
Because what your higher self wants for you is what you were meant to do.
Good words. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah. It's been great
having you. Okay. Thank you.